I want you to imagine a scenario for a second. Think about your everyday life.
Right.
Maybe you work in a corporate office or, perhaps you just interact with massive bureaucracies like your bank or your health insurance provider.
Right, the stuff we all deal with.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, I want you to picture yourself standing in front of a massive state-of-the-art control room that governs one of these systems.
Like a NASA bunker or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. You are staring through this thick glass wall at the piece of machinery that has been specifically engineered at the cost of tens of millions of dollars for one singular, uncompromising purpose.
Which is what?
Absolute perfect fairness. I mean, this isn't some rudimentary system. It is armed with ultra-high-definition, high-speed cameras capable of capturing thousands of frames per second.
Right.
It has dedicated data analysts and video technicians sitting in climate-controlled, soundproof bunkers. It has multiple geometric angles of every single blade of grass, every single movement.
So there's nowhere to hide, basically.
Exactly. It was sold to you and to the entire world as the ultimate eradicator of human error, the silver bullet for injustice.
Right, the perfect machine.
But then, right in front of your very eyes, you watch this supposedly infallible, mathematically perfect system fail spectacularly.
Just completely crash and burn.
Completely.
Right.
And we are not talking about a micromillimeter miscalculation that requires a physics degree to understand.
Yeah.
We are talking about a failure that defies the basic naked eye logic of a child.
Wow. Okay.
It fails completely. So how do you, as a human being who relies on systems to make sense of the world, react to that? Do you just assume the highly trained professionals running the machines are collectively having a bad day at the office?
I mean, maybe the first time, yeah.
Right. But as you watch the exact same illogical error happen again and again and again, do you start to feel a cold creep of paranoia?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you start to wonder if something, I don't know, a little more sinister is going on behind those glowing screens?
It is the ultimate modern psychological dilemma, honestly.
It really is.
When we build a machine specifically to find the objective truth, and that very machine feeds us an output that feels objectively, undeniably false, our brains quite literally short-circuit.
We just can't compute it.
Exactly. Neurologically speaking, we are forced into a state of severe cognitive dissonance. We have to choose between two highly uncomfortable realities.
Oh.
Either we believe in staggering, almost statistically impossible levels of professional incompetence, or we believe in a coordinated conspiracy.
And humans love a conspiracy.
We do. Generally speaking, people find the concept of a conspiracy much more comforting than the concept of absolute, unpredictable chaos.
Because it means someone is driving the bus.
Right. A conspiracy, at the very least, implies that someone, somewhere, is in control.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are wading right into the turbulent center of that exact psychological short circuit.
I'm ready for it.
Our source stack today comes straight from the digital terraces of modern football fandom. We are looking at massive, highly active, furiously passionate Reddit threads from Premier League and Fur Devils.
Which are notoriously calm and measured places.
Not totally.
Yeah.
Just bastions of quiet reflection.
Right.
But let me be very clear up front. Our mission today is not to sit here in a studio and litigate the minute, arcane laws of the sport of football.
Thank goodness.
Right. We are not here to argue about who deserved to win a specific football match. What we are doing is unpacking a truly fascinating phenomenon of human behavior.
The psychology behind the outrage.
Exactly. We are going to analyze exactly why millions of fans perceive inconsistent VAR, that is the Video Assistant Referee System decisions, as ironclad evidence of deep-seated systemic corruption rather than just near bumbling human incompetence.
It's a fascinating shift because the intersection we're looking at here is this volatile mix of advanced technology, extreme emotional investment, and the fragile nature of societal trust.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about a game played on grass. We are talking about a highly scrutinized, globally broadcast, billions of dollars entertainment industry where every micro movement of a player's limb is analyzed by millions of people in real time.
Down to the pixel.
Exactly. And when the governing bodies introduced a technology like VAR, the grand promise was that it would sanitize the game of its inherent human flaw.
It was supposed to fix everything.
Right. It was supposed to bring mathematical certainty to subjective chaos. But instead, the hyper-scrutiny introduced by this technology has somehow eroded trust in the authority systems even further.
It's made it worse.
So much worse. Information overload hasn't brought clarity to the fans. It has brought a profound, widespread paranoia.
Well, let's set the scene and ground this in the physical reality of the sport, just so you, listening at home, can picture what we're talking about.
Yeah, let's get into the specifics.
Ground zero for our discussion today,
Mm.
the catalyst for the specific Reddit threads we are analyzing is a highly contentious, incredibly bitter draw between Manchester United and Bournemouth.
Oh, that match was a powder keg.
It really was.
Yeah.
If you were following this match live, or even if you just glanced at the social media aftermath online the next morning, you know it was an absolute mess.
Total chaos.
We had red cards, we had denied penalties, we had managers losing their professional cool on the touchline, and we had boiling, unadulterated frustrations from the fans.
And to truly understand why this specific match triggered such a psychological meltdown, we have to isolate the specific incidents that broke the camel's back.
Right. It is essentially a tale of two penalties and one highly controversial red card.
Establishing the factual baseline of these events is critical here.
Right, because we can't talk about their reactions without knowing what they're reacting to.
Exactly. We cannot analyze the fans' psychological reaction without first validating what they actually witnessed. We have to look at the biomechanics of what happened on the pitch.
Because the physical reality forms the foundation of their bewilderment.
Right. It's entirely justified when you look at the tape.
Okay, so I am pulling up the incident logs from the match center sources now. Let's look at the first major flashpoint. It is the 67th minute of the game.
The tension is already incredibly high by this point.
Super high. Manchester United's young winger, Ahmad, is driving into the penalty box. He is moving at high speed, attempting to control the ball.
Right.
And then he is subjected to a challenge by Bournemouth's defender. The sources mention Kirkes, but many fans in the threads specifically point out a sequence involving a player they identify as Triffert, highlighting a pattern of physical play.
Yeah, the specific defender almost doesn't matter as much as the action itself.
Right, let's focus on the mechanics of the challenge on Ahmad. Looking at the fan descriptions, the video evidence they are citing, and the consensus in these massive threads, this was not a subtle shoulder-to-shoulder coming together.
No, not at all.
It wasn't two players merely competing for space. Fans describe it vividly as a two-handed grab and a forceful shove.
A two-handed grab, that's a key detail.
We are talking about the defender getting one hand firmly onto Ahmad's shoulder to arrest his momentum, and then using the other arm to physically shove him off balance.
They literally spin him completely around.
Yes. Truffert, or whichever defender fans are isolating in that sequence, literally spins Ahmad around. Crucially, and this is the vital part of the footballing law, there is absolutely no attempt by the defender to play the ball.
Right. The ball is entirely secondary to the physical manipulation of the attacking player.
Okay, so we have a clear visual of a physical altercation that, under the traditional analog rules of football, constitutes a foul.
Unquestionably.
And this is exactly where the multi-million-dollar system is activated. The VAR officials sitting in their remote bunker for the specific match referees, Craig Pawson and Stuart Atwell, pause the game.
They stop time, essentially.
They do. They have access to all those high-speed, slow-motion angles we discussed. They can watch the interaction from the front, from the back, from a bird's-eye view.
They review the exact biomechanics of the play.
And their official conclusion, relayed through the referee's earpiece and subsequently broadcast to the public, is that there is, quote, insufficient contact for a foul.
Insufficient contact.
The game continues. No penalty is awarded.
And that's where the collective mind of the fan base just snaps.
Wait, hold on. Let me wrap my head around that phrase, insufficient contact. Because here is where the absolute whiplash happens for the viewer.
The whiplash is severe.
In that exact same match, just minutes apart, Bournemouth striker Evanilson is awarded a penalty for a challenge that the fans in these sources argue involved significantly less physical force.
Like incredibly less force.
We are talking about a grazing challenge, a trailing leg, a fraction of the kinetic energy that was applied to Ahmad.
Barely a touch.
Right. And to make matters even more volatile, to really throw a match into the powder keg, Manchester United's central defender, Harry Maguire, is given a straight red card.
The ultimate punishment in the sport.
Yes, resulting in an ejection and a suspension, and it's for a foul that fans explicitly, angrily describe as having 1% of the contact of the unpunished Ahmad incident.
1%, that's the metric they use.
For those who don't know Maguire, he is a massive, towering center back. The foul he was sent off for looked, to the naked eye, like a clumsy tangle of legs, a standard late challenge.
Maybe a yellow card on a bad day.
Perhaps. But in slow motion, the referee deemed it worthy of an immediate red.
This specific triangulation of events is the crux of the entire psychological issue. We need to look at this through the lens of evolutionary biology and neuroscience.
Wait, really? Evolutionary biology?
Seriously, human beings are, at our core, pattern-matching machines. Our brains have evolved over millions of years to constantly scan our environment for consistency.
Because it keeps us safe?
Exactly. It is how we learn to survive. If I eat this berry, I get sick. Therefore, I avoid this berry. Tied directly into that neurological pattern recognition is our deeply ingrained, almost primal concept of fairness.
Right.
We are actually incredibly adaptable creatures when it comes to societal rules. We can comfortably accept a bad rule, a frustrating rule, or even a draconian rule. Just as long as we can clearly, visibly see that it is being applied equally and consistently to every single member of the tribe.
Okay, let me try to map that onto a real-world scenario so we can really feel the frustration these fans are experiencing.
Sure, go ahead.
Imagine you are driving to work. You are sitting at a four-way intersection. You watch a sports car blast through a solid red light going 90 miles an hour, swerving through traffic.
Just totally reckless.
Right. And a traffic cop is sitting right there in his cruiser. He watches the entire thing happen, takes a sip of his coffee, and does absolutely nothing. No sirens, no lights.
Just lets him go.
10 minutes later, you are driving down the exact same stretch of road. The speed limit is 45. You are going 46.
Oh, no.
1 single mile per hour over the limit. That exact same traffic cop pulls out, throws on the sirens, pulls you over, writes you a devastatingly expensive ticket, and impounds your vehicle on the spot.
That is infuriating.
If you were sitting on the side of the road watching your car get towed, are you mad at the fact that you broke the law by 1 mile per hour? Or are you enraged by the sheer unadulterated whiplash of the inconsistency?
You are enraged by the inconsistency, without a doubt. And the reason for that rage is that the inconsistency destroys the social contract.
Exactly.
If that traffic cop impounded every single car that went 1 mile per hour over the limit, including the sports car, you might think the laws of the town are utterly insane.
But you know the rules.
Right. You would understand the parameters of reality. You would know how to survive in that system.
Yeah.
When a system like VAR, which again, is not a human running on a muddy field, but a team of analysts with the luxury of pausing time and reviewing multiple high-definition angles, applies completely different, wildly contradictory standards to virtually identical physical situations within a tight 15-minute window. It shatters that fundamental agreement.
It breaks the game.
It shatters the fundamental agreement between the sport and its viewers. The fans are experiencing a collective trauma. They feel gaslit by the institution they have invested their time, money, and emotional energy into.
Gaslit, that is the exact right word. I'm looking at a specific quote from the Reddit threads here, from a highly upvoted user named Angry Puka.
What do they say?
They clearly went back, watched the broadcast replays, and wrote, quote, gets his first hand on a mod to pull him back, then the other to shove him. Yeah, totally legal.
The sarcasm is practically vibrating off the screen.
It really is. They are looking at the undeniable physical reality of the foul, the transfer of momentum, the two hands, the complete lack of intention to play the ball.
Right.
And then they're looking at the official institutional ruling of insufficient contact. Their brain is simply rejecting the official narrative because it contradicts the evidence of their own eyes.
And we must recognize that this rejection, this cognitive rebellion, isn't happening in a historical vacuum.
What do you mean?
It is happening in a modern era where the fan sitting at home on their couch, or even the fan in the stadium looking at their smartphone, often has a vastly superior view of the incident than the referee standing on the pitch.
Oh, that's a great point.
In the 1990s, the referee was the ultimate arbiter because he was the closest to the action. Today, the fan is watching the exact same slow-motion, zoomed-in replays that the VAR room is watching.
So they see everything.
Everything. So when the VAR room, with all its technological might, arrives at a conclusion that directly contradicts the plain visual evidence available to millions, the fan's trust doesn't just erode, it violently evaporates.
It's just gone.
The psychological leap they make is crucial here. They no longer think, oh, the referee was out of position and missed it.
Right, because the cameras didn't miss it.
Exactly. They think the referee saw exactly what I saw, exactly what the cameras show, and consciously, deliberately chose to ignore it.
That is a massive, terrifying leap for a fan base to make. Going from you missed it because you're human to you ignored it because you have an agenda.
It changes everything about how they consume the sport.
And what is truly fascinating about our source material today is that this feeling of being gaslit, this absolute brain-breaking bewilderment, isn't just restricted to the fans sitting in the cheap seats or raging behind anonymous keyboards on Reddit.
No, it goes much deeper.
This total breakdown in trust permeates the entire structure of the sport. It goes all the way down from the digital terraces right to the touchline.
To the people actually playing the game.
Yes. The professionals themselves, the managers and players who dedicate every waking hour of their lives to understanding the minute nuances of this game, are just as thoroughly confused as the fan on the couch.
This brings us to a vital secondary layer of the sources we are analyzing: the post-match reactions from the professionals involved in the game.
Right.
From a sociological standpoint, when the highly paid, highly trained actors operating within a system begin to vocalize the exact same profound disbelief as the observers outside the system, you no longer have localized complaints.
What do you have?
You have a documented, undeniable systemic crisis.
Man. Well, let's break down the quotes from Manchester United's interim manager at the time of this match, Michael Carrick. We need to contextualize Carrick for the listener.
Yeah, he's not a hothead.
Not at all. During his playing career, Michael Carrick was the quiet man of European football. He was an incredibly calm, composed, cerebral midfielder. He didn't scream at referees, he calculated.
Very stoic.
And he carried that exact same demeanor into his managerial career. He does not throw his toys out of the pram. He doesn't create sensational headlines for the press.
Which makes his quotes in the aftermath of this specific game so incredibly notable.
Exactly. He stood in front of the press cameras and said, and I'm quoting directly here, "To give one and not give the other is crazy. I can't get my head around it. Baffling, really."
Wow.
He went on to call the decision-making process astonishing and mental.
I want you to pay close attention to the vocabulary Carrick is utilizing there. He is a master of the game's tactics, yet he isn't standing there arguing the minutiae of Law 12 regarding fouls and misconduct.
He isn't bringing out the rule book.
No, he isn't talking about the technical definition of a careless challenge. He's deliberately using words associated with a total loss of sanity and logic. Crazy, mental, baffling.
Yeah, words you'd use for a chaotic situation, not a professional sport.
Right. He is pointing a finger directly at the complete collapse of comprehensible standards. He is telling the world that the framework he uses to understand his own profession has dissolved.
That is a powerful way to frame it. The framework has dissolved. And the team captain, Bruno Fernandes, completely reinforces that.
What did he say?
In his post-match interview, Fernandes didn't even sound angry. He sounded like a mathematician trying to solve a broken equation. He presented the situation like a strict logic puzzle.
Oh, interesting.
He said, either one is a penalty and so is the other, or none of them are. It is a completely binary choice to him.
Which is completely logical.
Right. You cannot have a universe where the light touch on Evanilson is a foul, but the two-handed throw on Ahmad is not. But then Fernandes introduces another variable that blew my mind. He brings up this fascinating point about a potential subconscious bias against smaller, more agile players. He claimed that players like Ahmad are often deemed soft by the officiating body.
Ah, right.
And therefore, they are expected to stay on their feet and absorb more physical punishment, whereas bigger, heavier players get the fouls called for them if they go down because it looks more unnatural.
That is a profoundly vital piece of context from Fernandes, and it speaks volumes about the rot in the concept of objective officiating.
It really does.
What Fernandes is doing there is introducing the reality of subconscious human bias into what is supposed to be a purely mechanical equation.
Because the machine doesn't care how big you are, but the human running it does.
Precisely. He is suggesting that the referees, even when looking at slow-motion video, aren't just measuring the objective physical force of the contact.
They're measuring the person.
Yes, they're actively factoring in the physical profile, the reputation, and the perceived durability of the human being receiving the contact.
That's wild.
If a referee requires a 150-pound winger to absorb 50 pounds of force to earn a foul, but only requires a 200-pound striker to absorb 20 pounds of force, the entire concept of an objective rulebook is dead.
It's completely subjective at that point.
Exactly. It is no longer about the law. It is about the referee's subjective interpretation of the victim.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. Because the sources also include the contrasting view from the opposing dugout. Bournemouth's manager, Andoni Iraola, was asked about the exact same incidents in his press conference.
And let me guess, he saw it differently.
Oh, completely differently. He claimed the Ahmad foul was never a penalty, not in a million years. But He fiercely maintained that the slight contact on his player, Evanilson, absolutely was a stone-cold penalty.
Shocker.
Right. So, aren't we just looking at standard, predictable football tribalism? Are these managers genuinely baffled by a broken system, or are they just highly paid PR agents for their respective clubs?
That's a very fair question.
Aren't they just trying to work the referees, manipulate the media narrative, and protect the points they just won or lost?
It is a completely fair challenge, and if we are being analytically honest, the reality of post-match press conferences is always a blend of both genuine frustration and calculated public relations.
They have an agenda.
Managers are, by definition, undeniably partisan. Their employment relies on securing points. However, if you look closely at the language used by Carrick, and particularly by the players involved, like Harry Maguire, you see a specific type of frustration.
A different flavor of it.
Right. It goes far beyond simply wanting a subjective call to go their way. They aren't just arguing that the referee was blind. They are desperately pleading for a comprehensible standard of behavior so they can do their jobs.
Okay, let's dive deep into Harry Maguire's reaction then. This is arguably the most compelling piece of evidence in our entire stack regarding the psychology of the professionals.
I agree. It's very revealing.
Maguire posted a message to his fans on Instagram a few hours after the game. Remember the context. He is the one who received the straight red card.
Right, for the clumsy tackle.
Yeah, he was sent off for a clumsy tangle of legs that the fans thought was incredibly soft, especially when compared to the violent, unpunished challenge on Ahmad. In his post, Maguire writes that his red card was, quote, soft, but that's where football is at deuces, using the abbreviation for at the moment. And I should know better.
He takes the blame.
He does. But then, immediately after that mea culpa, he adds the kicker. You would think both decisions would reach the same outcome.
If we carefully unpack Maguire's statement, we are witnessing a remarkable psychological tightrope walk. Think about the mental state required to write that.
It's very carefully worded.
Extremely. He is holding himself completely accountable for his ejection. He is openly acknowledging the current, highly scrutinized, somewhat fragile and sterile climate of the modern game.
Right. He's saying, I messed up under the current rules.
Yes. He is admitting to millions of followers that he shouldn't have given the referee even the slightest excuse to send him off. Yet, even in a moment of extreme public self-flagellation and accountability, his brain simply cannot reconcile the glaring inconsistency of the broader match.
He can't let it go.
He accepts his punishment, but he is fundamentally asking for the baseline of consistency. If you execute me for stealing a loaf of bread, you must execute the man who stole the bakery.
That is exactly it. He is basically saying, look, I accept these terrifying new, ultra-strict microscopic rules, but you have to apply them to the other team too. You can't change the rule book every 15 minutes.
You just can't.
And the fact that he has to say it on Instagram,
Yeah.
carefully couching his words, tells a story all its own.
Precisely. And we absolutely must consider the severe institutional constraints these professionals are operating under when they speak to the public.
Because they can't just say whatever they want.
No, managers and players in the Premier League face staggering, hefty financial fines, often tens of thousands of pounds, and potential multi-game suspensions if they cross a poorly defined line and question the fundamental integrity of the referees.
They'll get punished for speaking out.
They are structurally legally forbidden by their governing bodies from using words like corrupt, biased, or rigged.
So what do?
They are forced to utilize a sanitized corporate vocabulary. They use words like baffling, inconsistent, or disappointing to communicate a much deeper, much darker distrust to the public. They are speaking in a coded language of despair.
So when the highly paid professionals standing on the pitch, the men who study the laws of the game for a living, are throwing their hands up and chalking the match up to a baffling, broken, incomprehensible system, it creates a massive, undeniable wave of validation for the fans watching at home.
It proves the fans aren't crazy.
Right. When the manager doesn't understand the rules and the captain doesn't understand the rules, it sends a blinding beacon out to the world that there is a catastrophic systemic breakdown.
And that validation from the professionals is the ultimate psychological tipping point for the fan base.
How so?
When incompetence seems too vast, too mathematically improbable, too repetitive, and too utterly illogical to be real, the human brain cannot simply accept it. We actively, hungrily look for a motive.
We want a villain.
And we demand a why. We cannot accept that a multi-million-dollar technological system, equipped with multiple human redundancies and HD monitors, fails purely by accident on a weekly basis.
It's just too much of a coincidence.
Right. If it isn't an accident, it must be on purpose.
Which leads us perfectly, and perhaps inevitably, into the deepest, darkest waters of our deep dive today.
Here we go.
If we step away from the sanitized press conferences on the touchline and wade back into the unfiltered, anonymous depths of the Reddit threads, we see what happens when fans take that professional bewilderment and sprint with it.
They run wild with it.
They look for the motive. They demand the why. And the most common, glaring, neon-lit motive they land on is money. Cold, hard cash. Specifically, the shadowy influence of global betting markets.
This represents a monumental shift in the discourse. We're no longer talking about the mechanics of the sport or whether a tackle was a foul or not.
We're talking about fraud.
Yes, we have crossed a threshold where the fans are questioning the fundamental bedrock integrity of the sport itself. They are questioning if the product they are watching is actually a sport at all or if it is a scripted reality show.
Man, I want to read directly from this Our Premier League thread. The title of the post does not beat around the bush. It is bluntly, aggressively titled, "Are Refs Fixing Games for Betting Markets?"
Wow. Very direct.
And as you scroll through the sources, you see hundreds of fans pointing directly to the sheer incomprehensible volume of money floating around the modern football ecosystem.
It's astronomical.
One user, whose handle is StreetFrame4571, lays out the prevailing cynical logic perfectly. They say most pro competitions probably do it. It's just too much money at play to just let fate decide.
That specific quote is a chilling, stark reflection of modern societal cynicism.
It really is.
Notice the phrasing. The fan isn't just questioning the integrity of Craig Pawson or Stuart Atwell in one specific match. They're questioning the entire global superstructure of professional sports.
Everything is rigged, basically.
Right. Most pro competitions probably do it. They're suggesting that the financial stakes for broadcasters, sponsors, and betting syndicates have grown so astronomically high that the organic, beautiful unpredictability of sports, what they poetically refer to as fate, is simply no longer permitted to exist by the billionaires who stand to profit.
Because the house always wins.
Exactly. The margin for error is too high for the house to leave it to chance.
That is incredibly bleak. But what makes these Reddit threads so fascinating is that it isn't just wild, baseless, tinfoil hat paranoia.
They have receipts.
They do. The fans in these threads are well-read. They bring up actual, documented historical precedent to justify their deepest suspicions. Throughout these threads, one specific name keeps acting as a lightning rod. Felix Zweier.
Yes, Zweier.
Now, for you listening who maybe don't follow European refereeing politics, Felix Zweier is an active, highly prominent German referee. But the fans are quick to point out that in 2004, Zweier was actually implicated, prosecuted, and suspended for his involvement in a massive real-world match-fixing scandal.
It was a huge deal in Germany.
Massive. It involved another referee named Robert Heuser. Zweier took a €300 bribe as an assistant referee. He was banned for 6 months. In fact, the German Football Association kept completely secret for years.
Which just adds to the conspiracy.
Exactly. And yet today, he is still refereeing at the absolute highest levels of the sport, including Champions League semifinals.
It's quite the comeback story, or a nightmare, depending on who you ask.
So the fans look at the baffling VAR decisions on their TV screens, and then they look at the historical fact of Felix Zweier, and they say,
Yeah.
You're telling me corruption doesn't happen. It has happened. It is proven. And the guys who did it are still in charge.
It is the introduction of tangible historical evidence into a speculative modern theory. Felix Zweier's continued existence and prominence in the elite refereeing pool serves as a permanent, immovable anchor for all of these fears.
It grounds the paranoia.
It does. Whenever a fan is accused of being a crazy conspiracy theorist, they just point to 2004. But to truly, deeply understand why this specific theory of corruption takes hold so fiercely in the modern context of VAR, we need to introduce a brilliant philosophical concept.
Ooh, what's that?
It was actually explicitly cited by a highly educated fan deep in our source material. We need to talk about Hanlon's razor.
Oh, this is where the psychology gets so incredibly good. The user replicant O2 drops this philosophical bomb into the middle of a heated argument in the thread. Hanlon's razor.
It's a classic.
It is an old adage that states, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. It is a classic mental model for navigating a frustrating world.
Right, like bad drivers.
Exactly. If you are driving on the highway and someone cuts you off, your first instinct is that they are out to get you. But Hanlon's razor reminds you that they probably aren't an assassin sent to ruin your day. They're just a terrible, inattentive driver.
Stupidity is vastly more common than malice.
Stupidity is the default.
Exactly. And for over a century of football history, dating back to the Victorian era when the rules were codified, Hanlon's razor was the invisible shield that protected referees from allegations of corruption.
Because they were just human.
Think about the reality of officiating before technology. When a referee missed a blatant foul in 1995, fans lost their minds. They yelled, they called the referee blind, they called him an idiot, they questioned his intelligence.
Sure, standard fan stuff.
But fundamentally, they accepted the error as an inevitable byproduct of the human condition. Stupidity, or sheer physical incompetence, was an entirely adequate explanation. Because everyone understood that the referee was just a middle-aged man with one pair of human eyes, desperately sprinting through the mud, trying to accurately track the chaotic, multi-directional movements of 22 elite athletes in real time.
It's an impossible job. Missing a call was statistically guaranteed.
Yes. That makes total sense. You couldn't reasonably expect perfection from a guy running backward in the rain. But VAR changes the mathematical equation on Hanlon's razor completely.
It doesn't just change it, it completely shatters the razor.
Tell me why.
Because VAR fundamentally alters the environment in which the decision is made. The VAR room provides the officials with massive, ultra-high-definition monitors. It provides them with slow-motion, frame-by-frame scrubbing capabilities. It gives them freeze frames.
They have all the tools.
It gives them 3, 4, 5 different camera angles at the exact same moment. And perhaps most importantly, it places them in a quiet, temperature-controlled room where they can consult with multiple other trained officials over a headset without 70,000 people screaming at them.
The environment is perfect.
The fans firmly believe that with all of these advanced tools at their disposal, the stupidity excuse is officially dead and buried. You can no longer claim you were physically unable to see the event when you literally have the ability to pause time and zoom in on a player's boot.
Right.
Therefore, if the stupidity explanation is forcibly removed from Hanlon's razor, the only logical remaining conclusion in the minds of the fans is malice. If you didn't miss it by accident, you missed it on purpose.
I want to use an analogy here because it perfectly crystallizes what the fans are feeling. Imagine you are taking a high-stakes exam.
Yeah.
If you take a closed book, highly complex calculus test and you fail miserably, getting every question wrong, everyone around you will just logically assume, okay, he didn't study or he's just really bad at math.
Right. Incompetence.
Incompetence. Hanlon's razor applies.
Yeah.
But imagine a different scenario. Imagine you are taking that exact same exam, but it is an open book test. You have a laptop with an open internet connection. You have the answer key sitting on the desk.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And you have 3 world-class math tutors standing over your shoulder, pointing at the correct answers. If you hand in that test and you still fail miserably, people aren't going to think you were just bad at math.
They are going to think you failed on purpose.
Exactly. They will assume you deliberately sabotaged the test for an ulterior motive.
That is a brilliant, entirely accurate analogy for how the public perceives the video assistant referee system. VAR is the open book test with the tutors standing by.
And they still fail.
When the refereeing team, armed with all of those advantages, still somehow arrives at the objectively wrong answer, like saying there is insufficient contact when a player is violently thrown to the ground, the audience immediately assumes intentionality.
They assume sabotage.
And once a fan assumes intentionality, they look around the football landscape for a reason behind that sabotage. And what do they see everywhere they look? The omnipresence of the betting markets, providing an incredibly convenient, incredibly wealthy villain.
Let's talk about that proximity for a second, because the fans aren't pulling this out of thin air.
No, it's everywhere.
Is the presence of betting markets just the easiest villain to blame, or is there a genuine fire creating all this smoke? If you watch a Premier League broadcast today, the sport is absolutely saturated, almost drowning in betting sponsorships.
It's wall to wall.
The logos are plastered across the front of the players' shirts. The odds flash on the digital hoardings wrapping around the pitch while the game is being played.
It's unavoidable.
The commercials at halftime feature celebrities telling you to bet on the next goal scorer. The data feeds that power the broadcast are sponsored by gambling syndicates. The financial marriage is complete.
So the environmental conditions are absolutely ripe for conspiracy theories to flourish. Now, we must be analytically rigorous here.
Of course.
We do not have hard evidence in these specific Reddit sources of actual coordinated match fixing occurring in the modern Premier League regarding these specific Bournemouth and Manchester United calls.
We aren't saying it happened.
Right, but we absolutely must acknowledge the psychological environment the fans exist in. You have a multi-billion-dollar, highly aggressive global gambling industry, inextricably linked, financially and visually, to a sport where highly subjective, game-deciding choices, like whether a slight touch constitutes a penalty, are made by a handful of fallible individuals.
It's a dangerous mix.
Even if it is completely unfounded, the mere constant proximity of that much fluid capital to that much subjective human power provides incredibly fertile ground for the human brain to connect dots that may not actually exist.
It creates a baseline level of simmering suspicion that turns every single controversial whistle into a potential crime scene.
Okay, so we have the grand, almost cinematic conspiracy theory. Illegal betting rings, pulling strings in the dark VAR bunkers, manipulating the global markets point by point.
The James Bond villain stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But as I read deeper into these sources, there is another theory. What if we step away from the James Bond villain narratives? Because within these very same Reddit threads, there is another, much more human, much more subtle, and frankly, much more plausible form of bias that the fans are actively accusing the referees of.
Oh, this is the really interesting part.
It is a bias rooted not in financial greed, but in emotion, human cowardice, game management, and a sort of deeply ingrained locker room loyalty.
This is arguably a far more compelling, realistic, and ultimately concerning analysis of the systemic problem.
I think so too.
It moves the discourse away from the sensational idea of criminal malice and points the magnifying glass directly at the deep-seated psychological flaws and complex interpersonal dynamics that inevitably affect professional judgment in high-stress environments.
Let's look at this theory of emotional refereeing. This completely reframes how we watch the sport. Fans on the Red Devils thread started analyzing the timeline of the game, not just the isolated incidents in a vacuum.
Context matters.
Huge. One fan pointed out a crucial, undeniable detail about the flow of the match. Shortly after the Ahmad penalty shout was denied by VAR, Bournemouth immediately went down the other end of the pitch and scored a crucial equalizer, the Christie goal.
The chronological context of the match at that specific moment is absolutely vital to understanding the referee's psychology.
Exactly. The theory formulated by the fans is that the VAR official didn't just look at the biomechanics of the Ahmad foul in a vacuum. They theorized that the referee actively bottled giving the penalty to United because he was terrified of causing a massive, controversial, game-altering swing.
Think about the mechanics of what overturning that call would require.
It would be huge.
If VAR intervenes and gives the penalty to United, they have to completely wipe away the Bournemouth equalizer that just happened. They have to go rewind the clock, go all the way back up the pitch, and give Manchester United a penalty kick to potentially go 2-0 up.
It is a massive, violent, emotionally devastating swing in the narrative of the game. And the fans think the referee simply didn't have the courage to pull that trigger.
What the fans are astutely identifying here is a very real, well-documented phenomenon in officiating across almost all major sports.
Which is?
The concept of game management. Referees are human beings, and despite their training, they subconsciously try to manage the emotional temperature of a match.
They want to keep a lid on things.
Right. Their overarching, unwritten goal is often to not be the center of attention. They do not want to make decisions that irrevocably, dramatically alter the course of the game if they can find a justifiable way to avoid it. They prefer the game to decide itself.
They want to fade into the background.
In their minds, intervening to create a 2-goal swing feels like they are artificially interfering with the organic narrative. So they seek a rationale like insufficient contact to let the play stand.
Wait. That goes entirely against the whole fundamental point of their job, doesn't it?
It does.
They are supposed to be impartial judges enforcing a written code of laws, not dramatic directors managing the emotional temperature of a television product. If a crime happens in the first minute, it's a crime. If it happens in the 89th minute, it's a crime.
Ideally, in a vacuum of pure logic, yes. But what the fans are explicitly accusing the referees of doing is interpreting the context of the game rather than enforcing the laws of the game.
Right.
Fans believe, and arguably evidence supports, that a foul in the first minute of a match is judged entirely differently than that exact same foul in the 89th minute of a tied game.
Which is maddening.
They believe that a foul that makes the score 2-0 is judged much more harshly and requires much more evidence than a foul that simply makes it 1-0. It is the flawed human element of empathy and fear completely overriding the objective written rulebook.
And that deeply human element extends far beyond just managing the temperature of the players and the fans. It extends directly to the interpersonal relationships between the officials themselves.
The boys' club.
Exactly. The Reddit sources bring up a really damning piece of recent historical evidence regarding what they call the boys' club mentality, the PGMOL. Fans cite a highly publicized incident from a few seasons ago where former Premier League referee Mike Dean was a guest on a podcast.
Oh, this was a disaster.
And he admitted out loud on a live microphone to the public that while he was acting as the VAR official for a massive London derby between Chelsea and Spurs, he saw a clear, violent foul. A player named Romero literally pulled the hair of a Chelsea player named Cucurella, dragging him to the ground in the penalty box.
It was incredibly blatant.
Mike Dean saw it on the monitors. He knew it was a red card. But he consciously, deliberately chose not to intervene and overturn the wrong call made on the pitch. And his reasoning.
This is the crazy part.
He said the on-pitch referee, Anthony Taylor, was his pal, his mate. Taylor was having a tough, high-stress game, and Dean explicitly stated he didn't want to add to his friend's stress by sending him to the monitor to admit a mistake in front of the crowd.
That audio clip from Mike Dean is a watershed moment for the erosion of fan trust. You cannot overstate its destructive impact.
It proved everything the fans were saying.
It single-handedly confirmed every cynical, paranoid suspicion that fans harbored about the VAR process. It explicitly demonstrated that the multi-million-dollar technology was entirely secondary to the interpersonal dynamics, egos, and friendships of the middle-aged men operating it.
It's just wild.
The pursuit of objective truth was sacrificed to protect a colleague's feelings.
Let me bring in another analogy to really drive this horrifying realization home for the listener. Think about your own workplace. It is exactly like middle management in a corporate office.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of the VAR official sitting in the bunker as a senior supervisor. They're sitting in the back of the boardroom, and they are watching their buddy, a junior manager, give a massive presentation to the board of directors.
And they spot a mistake.
Yes, the supervisor immediately sees that their buddy has made a catastrophic mathematical error on a crucial slide. The supervisor knows for a fact it is wrong, but they decide not to speak up.
To save face.
They decide not to correct their friend in front of the whole board because they want to save them the public embarrassment. They figure, I'll just buy him a pint at the pub later and tell him to be more careful next time.
Right.
The terrifying problem here is that this presentation is being broadcast live to hundreds of millions of fans globally, and billions of dollars in prestige, relegation battles, and betting markets are riding on the outcome.
It perfectly, tragically illustrates the profound conflict of interest baked into the current system. VAR was aggressively sold to the global public as a cold, calculating, beautifully objective piece of technology.
A robot judge.
Right. It was presented as a digital robot that would dispense pure, blind justice. But the hitting reality is that it is operated by the exact same flawed human beings with the exact same interpersonal loyalties, emotional pressures, subconscious biases, and psychological frailties as before.
The machine didn't fix the human.
The introduction of the technology didn't remove the human flaw from the sport. It just took that human flaw and put it under a slow-motion, high-definition spotlight for the entire world to scrutinize.
Man, I think we have thoroughly dismantled the integrity of the system here. But to be entirely fair and balanced to the referees, there's a solitary voice of dissent in these sources defending the men with the whistles.
Good to get the other side.
Deep in one of the Reddit threads, a user claiming to be a former semi-pro referee chimes in and delivers a very sobering reality check to the angry mob. They state that referees receive visceral, relentless hate at absolutely every single level of the sport.
From Sunday League to the pros?
Yes, from a muddy park on a Sunday morning with 10 people watching, all the way up to the glittering stadiums of the Premier League. They describe the psychological armor referees have to build just to survive the abuse.
That's a brutal job.
They say, quite simply and tragically, you can't win as a ref. No matter what you do, half the stadium wants to kill you.
It is an incredibly important perspective to include if we want a complete psychological picture. The psychological pressure cooker these officials operate within is immense and largely unimaginable to the average fan.
They're under constant attack.
They are subjected to verbal abuse, physical threats at the grassroots level, and microscopic media dissection at the elite level. They are forced to make split-second, high-stakes decisions that are then infinitely dissected frame by frame.
By people who have all the time in the world.
Right, by people who possess the ultimate luxury of hindsight and multiple camera angles. It is, by definition, an impossible standard of perfection to meet.
But does that excuse the mistakes?
However, while understanding their immense psychological pressure might explain their defensive tribal behavior, it does absolutely nothing to alleviate the intense frustration of the fans who are forced to suffer the tangible consequences of their systemic mistakes.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most poignant emotional section of our deep dive today. What does this endless cycle of incompetence, conspiracy, and technological failure actually do to the people who care the most?
The fans themselves.
The fans, the lifeblood of the sport. As we comb through these sources, we're looking at a profound, heavy psychological weight and a global fan base that is deeply, fundamentally divided by their own paranoia.
Yes. If we move past the immediate anger of the denied penalty and we move past the sensational conspiracy theories about betting markets, what we are left with in the text of these sources is a palpable, overwhelming sense of emotional exhaustion and ultimate powerlessness.
Just a feeling of giving up.
Being a dedicated sports fan is a highly unique psychological investment. It requires deep, generational, emotional commitment and often significant financial investment.
Season tickets aren't cheap.
Exactly. Yet the fan possesses absolutely zero agency over the outcome of the product they consume. They are hostages to the whims of the officials.
You read through these threads, and the emotional toll is so clear, it's almost depressing. They aren't just talking about losing a game of football. They use the language of actual theft and assault.
Like they've been robbed.
They literally talk about being robbed of 2 points. They call the refereeing performance an absolute disgrace. It becomes clear very quickly that it isn't the singular error of missing a foul on a mod that breaks their spirit. It is the repetitive, inescapable, cyclical nature of the errors week after week.
And this psychological cycle of despair is massively exacerbated by what the fans universally view as the governing body's entirely inadequate, almost insulting response to these crises.
Yes, the meaningless corporate apology.
Oh,
Apologies.
The sources point out how fans actively, bitterly mock the inevitable press releases from the PGMOL, the professional refereeing body in England. A fan in the thread points out a highly specific, infuriating instance to prove their point.
The Burnley game, right? Yeah, earlier in the season, this exact same VAR duo, Stuart Atwell and Craig Pawson, wrongly disallowed a crucial goal by Lisandro Martinez, affectionately known by the United fans as Leche, in a tense match against Burnley. The fans were outraged.
Understandably.
A few days later, the PGMOL publicly admitted the mistake. They issued a formal apology to the club. But what does that piece of paper actually do?
It does absolutely nothing tangible, and that is the root cause of the fans' deep disenfranchisement. Think about it. When the governing body acknowledges a critical, game-altering failure but provides zero restitution, the lost points aren't magically given back to the team.
The table doesn't change.
Exactly. The league table isn't retroactively changed, the result stands, and then those very same officials are assigned to officiate that very same team's next crucial game. It creates an incredibly toxic, inescapable dynamic.
You're just stuck in the loop.
The fans feel like they are screaming into a soundproof void. The system openly admits it is broken, but it steadfastly refuses to fix itself or hold its operators to any meaningful level of professional accountability.
No consequences, as one fan bluntly, perfectly put it. But here is an incredibly interesting wrinkle in the fan reaction that I noticed while reading the threads. The sources show a very clear, distinct divide in how different factions of fans interpret this broken system.
Like the big club versus small club mentality.
Exactly. Specifically highlighting the philosophical divide between the supporters of massive global clubs and the supporters of smaller regional clubs. For instance, we have a Burnley fan chiming into the thread.
Okay.
And from their perspective, they note that VAR heavily, consistently favors the top-tier wealthy teams like Manchester United. The Burnley fan argues that a single bad decision hurts a small club fighting tooth and nail for survival far more than it hurts a giant insulated club.
Because relegation is on the line.
They genuinely feel that the referees subconsciously protect the big money assets and always give the elite clubs the benefit of the doubt.
And yet, in the very same threads, occupying the very same digital space, you have Manchester United fan supporters of one of the richest, most historically dominant clubs on the planet passionately arguing that there is an active, targeted conspiracy to keep them down the minute they hit a good run of form.
Oh, totally.
They believe the referees are jealous of their wealth and success and officiate them more harshly to level the playing field.
Okay, I have to pause and challenge this dynamic. Let's look at the logic here. Both sides, the Burnley fan and the United fan, are looking at the exact same technological system.
Right.
They are watching the exact same group of middle-aged referees.
Mhm.
And both sides are completely fervently convinced the system is actively, maliciously rigged against them. The small club thinks it's rigged to protect the big club. The big club thinks it's rigged to tear down the elite.
It's a paradox.
Doesn't that paradoxically prove that the referees aren't actually corrupt against anyone in particular, but that they are just universally, equally, tragically struggling with the immense difficulty of the job?
From a purely objective statistical standpoint, yes. The sheer universality of the grievances across all 20 clubs strongly suggests that systemic incompetence is the culprit, rather than targeted, orchestrated malice.
It's just incompetence across the board.
However, as we have established, human emotion regarding sports rarely operates on a foundation of objective logic. This phenomenon perfectly highlights the neurological power of confirmation bias.
How does that play out here?
When a highly subjective decision goes against your team, your brain instantly catalogs it in a mental filing cabinet labeled evidence of the grand conspiracy against us. However, when a terrible decision goes for your team, your brain dismisses it immediately as the referee simply finally getting it right, or the universe balancing itself out.
We only remember the pain.
We only remember the pain.
And this overwhelming frustration with the present reality leads to this incredible, almost romantic yearning for the past. Right in the middle of all this intense, highly technical debate about frame rates and VAR protocols, you have fans screaming in all caps, "Bring back Collina!"
Collina, the legend.
For those who don't know, they were talking about Pierluigi Collina. He was this legendary, terrifying, highly respected Italian referee from the late 90s and early 2000s. He had these piercing blue eyes, a completely bald head, and an aura of absolute unquestionable authority. The fans are begging for a return to his era.
This is a textbook manifestation of what we could call the Collina Effect, which is essentially a sociological example of memory bias or rosy retrospection. We tend to view the past through a highly filtered, deeply nostalgic lens.
Because even in the Reddit threads, other older fans quickly jump in to burst that nostalgic bubble. They point out that Collina, despite his godlike aura, made highly controversial, game-ruining mistakes too.
He was human after all.
Exactly. A fan specifically cites a massive Champions League game between Everton and Villarreal where Collina ruled out a perfectly good legal goal for a phantom foul, effectively ruining Everton's entire European campaign. He wasn't perfect. He was just a guy making guesses.
He absolutely wasn't perfect. But nostalgia is an incredibly powerful psychological drug, especially when the present is causing you pain.
The good old days weren't always good.
Right. Before the advent of VAR, referee mistakes, while infuriating, were ultimately accepted as an immutable, organic part of the game. It was like the weather. You couldn't control a bad call any more than you could control a sudden rainstorm.
You just had to live with it.
It was frustrating, but fundamentally, it was human. The introduction of high-definition technology fundamentally shifted the societal expectation from flawed human management to flawless digital perfection.
And perfection is impossible.
Now, because the expectation is perfection, any minor error feels not just like a mistake, but like a deliberate hostile attack on the integrity of the sport. Fans long for the days of Collina, not because he never made mistakes, but because when he made a mistake, they could accept it as the natural flaw of a mortal man,
Instead of a broken machine.
rather than the sinister failure of an infallible, multi-million-dollar machine.
That is a staggering, profound shift in perspective. We have traded the comforting chaos of human error for the terrifying paranoia of digital perfection. Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap the incredible journey we've been on today.
It's been quite the ride.
We started by looking at the sheer, baffling inconsistency on the pitch. The violent, unpunished two-handed grab on Ahmad versus the devastating red card for Harry Maguire's fractional, clumsy contact.
The physical reality of the game.
Then we moved from the pitch to the touchline, analyzing how professionals like Michael Carrick and Bruno Fernandes voiced a profound bewilderment that accidentally validated the fans' deepest anger.
The breakdown of the professionals.
We plunged into the dark, paranoid waters of fan theories, exploring how the immense financial gravity of betting markets turns Hanlon's razor upside down, making organized malice seem more mathematically plausible than sheer stupidity.
The shift from incompetence to corruption.
And finally, we landed on the stark, psychological reality of emotional refereeing, the defensive boys' club mentality protecting its own, and the profound feeling of powerlessness that leaves millions of fans shouting into a digital void, desperately wishing for a romanticized past that never really existed.
It is a comprehensive, deeply human look at a modern paradox. We are witnessing how a technological system designed and implemented with the explicit goal of building ultimate trust has ironically systematically dismantled that trust piece by piece.
Now, as we wrap up, I want to connect this entire deep dive directly back to you, the listener. You might not care about football. You might not know who Harry Maguire is.
But the human element applies to everyone.
Exactly. Think about how you process unfairness and inconsistency in your own life, your own career, or your own community. When a massive system you rely on, whether it's the automated HR department algorithm at your company, a faceless government bureaucracy handling your taxes, or a social media algorithm deciding what news you see, fails you repeatedly and illogically, how quickly do your thoughts shift?
It happens fast.
How fast do you go from assuming the person on the other end of the phone is just having a bad day to assuming the entire corporate system is fundamentally, maliciously rigged against your success? As we've seen today with these passionate football fans, it is deeply, undeniably human nature to seek order and reason in a chaotic world.
Even if that reason is a dark conspiracy.
Even if the only reason we can find is a dark conspiracy.
And I want to leave you with one final, perhaps slightly provocative thought to mull over, something that sits just outside the immediate anger of these Reddit threads, but strikes at the heart of the issue.
Okay, let's hear it.
What if the real foundational problem isn't the referees being incompetent? What if it isn't the global betting markets pulling strings in the shadows, or even the VAR technology itself malfunctioning?
Then what is it?
What if the actual written laws of football rules that were codified in a Victorian era, designed specifically to be interpreted by the naked eye of a single man running around a muddy field, are simply fundamentally incompatible with frame-by-frame, high-definition, microscopic scrutiny? Words like careless or excessive force are subjective human concepts. Perhaps we're trying to forcefully enforce analog laws in a rigidly digital world. And until the entire foundational rulebook of the sport is torn up and rewritten specifically for the age of slow-motion cameras, the blurry line between human incompetence and perceived corruption will always exist solely in the paranoid eye of the beholder.
Wow. Enforcing analog laws in a digital world. That perfectly takes us right back to that imaginary control room we pictured at the very start of the show.
Full circle.
You can buy all the ultra-high-definition, 1,000-frame-per-second cameras in the world.
Yeah.
But if the written rule you are trying to enforce is inherently blurry and subjective, the camera's never going to make it sharp. It's just going to show you the blur in higher definition.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for the humanity inside the machines, and we'll see you next time.